I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
Hey, what's poppin', my homies? What's good? Hope you're doing well, doing blessed, having a good day, having a good week. Joe Pyfer versus Jack Hermansson. Absolute fire in the main event. But before we get into breaking down fights, making predictions, may we check my bets from last week. Now guys, it's another week that just didn't go my way. I kind of feel unlucky not to get the final play in on Kisriev. Kind of feel unlucky not to get the long shot parlay that only missed by one. Also feel kind of unlucky not to cash Maxim, but why is Charles Johnson saving his career like that? And why is Maxim letting him save his career? To start the fight by dropping Charles Johnson twice, then to lose the next 10 minutes? Kinda weird. But yeah, to stop my bad streak, the only way I'm going to do that is to just keep it moving, keep watching tape, keep trying to be logical with my bets. Need to be even more logical with my bets. And to be honest, I'm going to try to do that. You know, if I'm doubtful on any bet, no bet. That's the point I'm at. You know, the risk has to be limited. It has to be limited even more. Now moving into the MoneyCity Champions, if you're a champion on MoneyCity, you know what that means. It means that's money, pure money. Let's go. And of course, if I can join you with MoneyCity, if I can do that, that'll be a good thing. Alright guys, let's go. Alright, moving into the first matchup on this card, we've got Daniel Marcos taking on Aoriqileng, and this is a good matchup, a good way to start the card. You know, last week we had Thomas Peterson and Jamel Pokes, which was kinda low level to open up the card, but this one, it's a banger. Now guys, Daniel Marcos is undefeated. However, there's a solid case that Davy Grant won that matchup. You know, split decision with Davy Grant, but yeah, I kind of felt like Davy Grant should have got his hand raised. Yeah, Daniel Marcos has really good footwork. He's good at evading the strikes of the opponent. I feel like I'm always mentioning footwork, but, you know, the ability to move your feet in a fight is pretty important. You know, look at Roman Dolidze, a clunky statue of a man in the kickboxing. And then you've got Nasruddin just floating like a butterfly. I think Marcos floats nicely. The footwork's good. Now, the opponent, Aoriqileng, has blind man's defense. His defense is really bad. But that's probably down to the fact that he's so willing to stand and trade. He's got the tough man style. And the tough man style may seem like the dominant masculine style to have. But even Mike Tyson said, fighting is for smart people, not for tough people. And if man like Mike Tyson's saying that, he's probably right. And what Mike Tyson's implying by that is hit and don't get hit. You know, don't rely on toughness. Now, Aoriqileng is somebody that relies on toughness, whereas Daniel Marcos seems to be more advanced in terms of footwork and defense. So my prediction is going to be Daniel Marcos to win the fight. I've actually never picked against Aoriqileng somehow, but yeah, we'll pick against Aoriqileng for the first time. The pick is Daniel Marcos. I think the speed, the footwork and defense, those are key factors. And that's my pick. Moving into a matchup between Hyder and Amil taking on Fernie Garcia. A low-level matchup that's not worth betting, in my opinion. But yeah, I did bet on Hyder and Amil on the contender against Emre Sonmez. And if you look at Hyder and Amil in that fight, you can see that he's very aggressive. Almost too aggressive. You know, really overcommits to his punches, which isn't a good thing against wrestlers, because if you commit to your strikes too much, you find yourself getting hit with a clean level change, right? You find yourself on the mat. However, Fernie Garcia isn't some elite wrestler, so Hyder Amil should be okay with his aggressive boxing style. Now guys, Fernie Garcia on the flip side is clearly fighting for his job, and that's down to the fact that he hasn't won a fight in the UFC yet. It's now his fourth opportunity to win a fight, and it feels like anytime I pick against a fighter that's going into a career-defining matchup, they end up winning the fight, saving their career for the time being and proving me wrong, like Charles Johnson. Now guys, Fernie Garcia may win the fight. He may lose the fight. Nobody knows for sure what's going to happen with this matchup. But what I can tell you is, this is a low-level scrap. It's low-level. Fernie Garcia is bad defensively. His cardio's not that good. Hyder Amil is overly aggressive, which makes for great entertainment. And I think that's the main reason as to why this matchup has been put together. It's more of a fight that you watch for fun than to bet for fun, in my opinion. But for the purpose of my content, the prediction is going to be Hyder Amil to be more significant with his boxing. And that's mainly down to the fact that he's very aggressive. I took him on the contender, I bet him. I'm going to take him again, but I'm not going to bet him. Moving into a matchup between Zach Pauga taking on Bogdan Guskov. We've got some fire with this one. It may be a low-level matchup, but It's a low-level matchup that's got some fire, if that makes sense. Now, guys, Zach Pauga only has 8 professional MMA fights, so only a handful of scraps for Zach Pauga. And Bogdan Guskov has more first-round knockouts than Pauga has pro MMA fights. I think Bogdan Guskov has like 10 first-round knockouts. So making a prediction just based on fighter resumes, the prediction is going to be Bogdan Guskov. However, I mentioned it last week and I mention it again. The fighter records, they're just factors we consider. It doesn't tell us who wins or who loses, it's just a factor we consider. Now, the experience does lie with Bogdan Guskov, but his experience is predominantly first round experience. He's got a lot of experience with completely dusting the opponent early in round 1. Now, this wasn't the case in his UFC debut. He tried to bully Volkan Ozdemir and it didn't work. If anything, it showed us just how average Bogdan Guskov really is. Now, guys, Zach Pauga does have questionable cardio and he did struggle with the speed and footwork of Modestus, but I do think he's technically better both offensively and defensively compared to Bogdan Guskov. So for that reason, the prediction is going to be Zach Pauga to completely dust Bogdan Guskov early in the fight, potentially round 1. Moving into the next matchup, we've got Jeremiah Wells taking on Max Griffin. Now, there's a few things I like about Jeremiah and a few things I dislike. And same with Max. But yeah, starting with Jeremiah, he's got violent stopping power. That's something you can really like with Jeremiah, right? The ability to sleep the opponent, the ability to disconnect the consciousness of the opponent. And not only does Jeremiah have the stopping power, but he's got the speed. You know, the speed in which he translates that stopping power to the target, it's really impressive. One thing I'm noticing with Jeremiah though is he leaves himself quite open to the counters. But here's the thing. Max Griffin doesn't really have the speed or reactions to really expose the defensive mistakes Jeremiah's going to make. To speak more about Jeremiah, his grappling is very good. His jiu-jitsu is extremely good. I took Carlson Harris as an underdog against Jeremiah and that bet looked really bad. Right up until the point where Carlson Harris was like, look, you've dominated me round in, round out. I'm going to take the win still. Give me your neck. Let's go. Now to speak about Max Griffin. Now, Max Griffin is a fighter that's been around for a while. There's nothing you can teach Max. He's a solid boxer, solid competitor. He's a decent name to put on your resume, which is something Michael Morales did do. And now Jeremiah's looking to do the same thing. Now, guys, if Max Griffin wins the matchup, I think more than likely survived the storm in round 1. Potentially worked his way back to the feet more than once. And probably stayed in the fight until Jeremiah got tired. Whereas in my opinion, if Jeremiah wins, it's probably because the speed was too much for Max. His takedowns were successful. And Max was potentially gun shy, didn't take advantage of Jeremiah late in the fight when he should have. Because like I said, Jeremiah's cardio is not good. So even if he's winning the fight, you can potentially rob the fight from Jeremiah late. That's exactly what Carlson Harris did. You know, if Max is losing, he can still do that. But you've got to pull the trigger. Guys, for me personally, I'm going to side with Jeremiah Wells. I think his speed, his power, his grappling, these are reasons he can beat Max Griffin. In terms of making a bet, not really liking this matchup for a bet. But yeah, the pick is going to be Jeremiah. Alright, moving into a matchup between Devin Clark taking on Marcin Prachnio or Prachnio. And guys, by the way, if you can hear construction outside my house, apologies for that. But yeah, moving into this next matchup, we've got wrestling versus karate. I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it quite a few times, and I'll say it again. Even though someone in the comment section is going to disagree. Karate doesn't work. Karate just doesn't work. Unless you're Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, or George St. Pierre, or Lyoto Machida, it certainly doesn't work if you're Marcin Prachnio. And guys, I picked Prachnio to beat William Knight as an underdog. He performed really well in that fight, but was there really a fight? You had karate versus a weightlifter. Maybe karate works against weightlifters, but it's not going to work against the wrestling of Devin Clark. So give me Devin Clark to easily get a takedown and to essentially dust Marcin Prachnio on the mat. Wrestling works. Karate doesn't work. Moving into a matchup between Loma Lookboonmee taking on Bruna Brasil. Guys, Loma Lookboonmee's been one of my favourite Muay Thai fighters for years. And still to this day, I get excited over a Loma Lookboonmee Muay Thai masterclass. She's just so good. Technically very good. Her Muay Thai is arguably some of the best Muay Thai in the whole of the UFC. Not just in the female divisions, I'm talking in the whole promotion. Now obviously when you fight someone who's got really good Muay Thai striking, most of the time you just say, forget all that. Let's get to the mat, let's wrestle, let's grapple. And that's really what you've got to do against Loma. And that's what Lupi Godinez did and Angela Hill. They were both able to bring Loma to the mat, which is exactly what you've got to do unless you're a really good striker. Now, Bruna Brasil is a good striker. Her speed is good. The height and reach is something you've always got against Loma Lookboonmee. But guys, here's the thing in my opinion. If you're going to beat Loma Lookboonmee, you can't just show up and expect to do it in round 1. You've got to do it round in, round out. You know, if round 1 is the best round, if that's all you've got against a really good Muay Thai striker like Loma Lookboonmee, it's not going to be enough. So in my opinion, if Bruna wins the fight, it's a very, very good win. I'm not going to make that prediction though. I like Loma Lookboonmee. I think she's very good. Knees in the clinch. Good Muay Thai work in the clinch, kicks on the outside. I think Loma's going to dominate Bruna outside of round 1. Bruna may start well, but I think there's a massive difference in striking. You know, Loma's high level. Bruna's good, but I think she's going to fade. And as she fades, Loma's like, look, now it's time to fight. So yeah, give me Loma. Moving into a matchup between Carlos Prates, the newcomer, taking on Trevin Giles. Fun fight, fun matchup. So let's start by speaking about Trevin Giles. And Trevin Giles is a guy we know. He's been around the UFC for a few years. He's fought in multiple weight classes, light heavyweight, middleweight, and now welterweight. Guys, in my opinion, welterweight's a bad move for Trevin Giles. I think Trevin Giles has a glass jaw, a dusty jaw. I also think he's struggling with the speed of welterweight. He's got a dusty chin. He's struggling with the speed and his cardio's not good. This is a recipe for disaster. Now on the flip side, we've got Carlos Prates, the newcomer, a Muay Thai striker that doesn't exactly look like a Thai striker. His hands are down, which in Muay Thai your hands are high. And he's also bouncing on his feet, moving around a lot, which again, in Muay Thai you're not doing that. Because if you're moving around a lot in Muay Thai, you may walk yourself into a kick. And that's obviously something you don't want to do. Now, Carlos Prates does have his own unique style. And I do like that. Hands are down, light on his feet. The rear kick of Prates is so sick. He digs that teep kick right into the midsection. Almost like he's trying to stab you with it. Now, the teep kick is mainly used to create space, right? It's a push kick, to push the opponent backwards. You may use it against someone that's overly aggressive, but Prates uses it to cause serious damage. Watch out for the rear kick. The left kick of Prates is so sick, so nasty. But yeah guys, in my opinion, it's an easy prediction to make on the newcomer Carlos Prates. I think he's going to dust Trevin Giles. If Trevin doesn't get Prates to the mat, I think he's in trouble. I think he's in big trouble. And guys, by the way, I saw a few comments on the last breakdown. People in the comment section saying every time he says dusted, take a shot. If you're playing that game, you're going to get wavy. Dusted, let's go. Now guys, no smoke break for me. I'm still on a tolerance break, but more than likely, that tolerance break isn't going to last too much longer, as I want to get faded into the land of THC. But I will hit the light for anyone that's sparking, anyone that's blazed. Now, a couple of things that I do want to mention. I've got some construction going on outside my house, so apologies if anyone can hear that. They've stopped at the moment, but at points in the video, I think the construction was pretty loud. And also the Aoriqileng fight. I've not made a breakdown for that fight, as there's a new replacement. But my goodness, was Aoriqileng gonna smash Damir Hadzovic? He was going to retire Damir Hadzovic. So guys, let me do a little bit of tape on the new replacement for Aoriqileng. And I'll leave a pinned comment who I'm going to pick. More than likely it will be Aoriqileng. I just wish he was fighting Damir Hadzovic, because Damir was going to get smashed. Inactive, old, slow. So yeah, Damir was going to get easily dusted, and probably in the first round. But now he's fighting someone that's not old, not inactive, and they're not slow. So yeah, the betting line's probably going to be inaccurate, and we're probably not going to be able to make a bet on Aoriqileng like we was gonna against Damir Hadzovic. And guys, the final thing I want to mention, can the UFC betting gods just let me go to MoneyCity? Just once in 2024, because so far just no luck. No luck whatsoever. I did cash Medeiros, and then I lost on Azamaxim. And then I had two more bets, which one of them was a plus 400 parlay, a 4-leg parlay. I don't normally do those parlays. And in this situation, it missed by one, and that's why I don't do them. And that was Urbina. Zhang Yong Lee, Nasruddin, and Natalia Silva, they all smacked. And then I had one more bet, which was Hizrev against Moradov, which was a no contest. And in my opinion, Hizrev was going to dominate that fight. I think he was going to win that. But yeah, let's go. Let's go. Moving into a matchup between Rodolfo Vieira taking on Armen Petrosyan. This is going to be Jiu-Jitsu versus Muay Thai. Now, Rodolfo Vieira is the elite grappler, and Armen is the Muay Thai player. Rodolfo Vieira has bad cardio. his boxing isn't really effective, and defensively it's not too good, and that's especially when he gets tired. His defense is really bad. But then again, most fighters who get tired, their defense usually fades. It's not easy to stay defensively sound as you fatigue, especially for fighters that are primarily grapplers, and Rodolfo Vieira is primarily a grappler. If Rodolfo Vieira is made to kickbox with Armen Petrosyan outside of round 1, in my opinion, it's no bueno. It's not going to look good. Now, Armen Petrosyan may not have the grappling credentials. He's not a black belt. He's not a really good grappler. But what he does have is a good get-up game. He doesn't accept being stuck on his back. He's actively working back to the feet. But against someone that's such a good grappler, such a good jiu-jitsu player like Rodolfo Vieira, you have to make sure you don't give up your back when you get back to the feet. It's potentially game over if you give up your back against Rodolfo Vieira. Now, if Armen Petrosyan does survive round 1, he doesn't get submitted in round 1. If that happens, more than likely Rodolfo Vieira gets tired like he normally does. And that's where the takedown defense becomes easier for Armen, and then his hands start to really find the mark. So give me the underdog, Armen Petrosyan, to find a KO TKO in the middle of the matchup or potentially late. Moving into a matchup between Michael Johnson taking on Darrius Flowers. Now guys, here's the thing. The only thing that's going to let Michael Johnson down in this fight, it's not his grappling, it's not his footwork, it's not his speed, it's not his boxing, it's none of that. The one thing that's going to let Michael Johnson down is his dusty chin. His chin is just pure dust. And guys, obviously in a fight you do need a certain level of durability to stay competing and to stay in the fight. So the only concern here would be the chin, the dusty chin of Michael Johnson. Now guys, Darrius Flowers does have the aggression. You see that against Jake Matthews, right? He started that fight, tried to overwhelm Jake, which didn't happen. But against Michael Johnson, all you've got to do is land one clean punch and you potentially win the fight. Now, I'm going to side with Michael Johnson. I do believe there's more positives than negatives. The only negative is the dusty chin. Whereas the positives are he's a good boxer. He's got more experience. He can wrestle. His speed is good. Everything about Michael Johnson is good. It's just the durability. His chin is just pure dust. But my prediction is going to be Michael Johnson for the reason that, like I said, there's more positives than negatives. So if Darrius Flowers wins, all the credit. But yeah, the pick is Michael Johnson. And hopefully he sleeps Darrius Flowers. Gives him his flowers when he wakes up. That was weird. I don't know why I said that. Alright, moving into a matchup between who we got. What is this matchup? Gregory Rodrigues taking on Brad Tavares. Now guys, this matchup in my opinion, it's not really a fight to bet. You know, you want to watch this fight. It's a fun scrap. Now, Gregory Rodrigues does have poor defense. And that's mainly down to the fact that he's a Muay Thai player. You don't move your head much in Muay Thai. And that really cost him against Bruno Ferreira. It's kind of cost him in a couple fights. You know, striking defense isn't that good. Now, Brad Tavares on the flip side, I did cash him against Chris Weidman. And I think most people bet Brad Tavares for the obvious reason that obviously Chris Weidman snapped his leg like a wig. And when you come back after that, you know, people want to bet against you. So yeah. But I kind of felt like Brad Tavares should have done more against Chris Weidman. You know, it kind of seemed like he was coasting. Like he was allowing Chris to survive. And I kind of didn't like that. But yeah, this matchup, you're not really going to see that. Because if you're trying to coast against RoboCop, it's not going to work. So yeah, this matchup's going to be a good matchup. It's going to be violent. Gun to the head. I think at plus 200, you've kind of got to pick Brad Tavares. But yeah, in my opinion, it's not a fight to bet. But I've had to bet. Give me Brad Tavares. Moving into a matchup between Potieria taking on Robert Bryczek. Another fun matchup. Now guys, there's going to be people that will literally fade Potieria until he gets cut from the UFC. And those people that do that, in my opinion, it's not a bad tactic. Especially if you believe Potieria isn't UFC caliber. However, if you look at his last fight, he should have won that fight, in my opinion. Like, what more did he need to do for the ref to really step in and stop that fight? The inconsistencies of the referees are kind of shocking. Guys, it's like sometimes, what more does a fighter need to do to get a stoppage? And other times it's like, why is he stopping that? Why is the ref stopping that? But then again, being a ref, it's not an easy job, right? You've got a couple split seconds to make a decision. So I can understand the inconsistencies, but when you're putting money on these fights, the inconsistencies are a real inconvenience. Not that I bet on Potieria. I'd never do that. I don't think Poteria's that good. Now on the flip side, you've got Robert Bryczek, who does seem to be pretty good. His hands are nice and sharp. Too sharp for someone like Potieria. So guys, give me Bryczek to KO Potieria. and potentially get Potieria cut from the UFC. And guys, every time I pick someone to lose and then to get cut, they go in there and prove me wrong. Recently, right? But still, give me Bryczek to dust Potieria. I think Poteria's defensively bad. Then his cardio starts to fade, you know, and even when he does win, the ref doesn't stop the fight. So yeah, give me Bryczek to dust Potieria. Moving into the co-main event, we've got Dan Ige taking on Andre Fili. Absolute fire in the cage. Pure fire. If you're a UFC fan, you appreciate both Dan Ige and Andre Fili. Both these guys have good grappling, and both of them can stand and bang. They can do both. I think Andre Fili has a tendency to make defensive mistakes though. He's not making the worst defensive mistakes you've ever seen. But if you look at Andre Fili, I think there's quite a few times in his performances where defensively he could do better. But then again, most people in a fight care more about the offense, which makes sense considering defense isn't going to get you the win, right? The defense can help you, but obviously the offense is really where you win a fight. Not saying defense isn't important, it's very important. But to win the fight, you have to be offensive. It's almost like in football where they say goals win games, right? And in basketball, they say defense wins games, but I don't see how, right? You've got to put the basket in the net, right? Now let's go back to mixed martial arts. Dan Ige is very sharp with his boxing. He can go from A to B very fast. And I think Andre Fili has to stay defensively sound against someone like Dan Ige. Keep Dan Ige on the outside. Now Dan Ige and Andre Fili are two of my favourite fighters. It's a fire co-main event. I'm not going to be making bets. No bets on the co-main event, but give me Dan Ige to be a little bit too sharp for Andre Fili. I did bet Nathaniel Wood against Fili, and that was an absolute banger. I won't be betting against Andre Fili again, but my prediction will be 50k Dan Ige. That's my pick. Moving into the main event, and again, it's fire in the cage. Joe Pyfer versus Jack Hermansson. Now guys, Jack Hermansson has way more experience than Joe Pyfer. He's got a massive experience advantage, and that could really help him against the hype of Joe Pyfer. But as of right now, be Joe Pyfer, right? Joe Pyfer is excellent with his boxing. Offensively and defensively a solid boxer. He's also been practicing in jiu-jitsu since the age of 5 years old. So that's like 2 decades of jiu-jitsu experience. Now guys, here's the thing. We all cap these fights differently. You may agree with my prediction, but you may disagree with the breakdown. Or you may disagree with my prediction, but then you may agree with the breakdown. For me personally, I actually think the biggest challenge Joe Pyfer has in this main event is the extra 2 rounds. I don't think the biggest challenge is going to be find someone with more experience. I don't think it's the wrestling or ground game of Hermansson. I don't think it's going to be the pressure of Jack Hermansson. I think the biggest challenge that Joe Pyfer's going to face is those extra 10 minutes. Now some people might say, well, Joe Pyfer doesn't have bad cardio. So why would that be the biggest challenge? Guys, being a 5-round fighter isn't necessarily decided just based on cardio. There's so much you've got to do to compete in a 5-rounder. You may not start as fast as you usually start. You may think about what you're doing a little bit more. You have to. You have to reserve more energy. You have to essentially prepare for battle in a different way than what you would normally do in a 15-minute fight. The 5-rounders are massive challenges. Massive challenges. Now guys, I'm going to say Joe Pyfer does pass the challenge and wins this main event. But make no mistake, I really think those extra 10 minutes, that's the real challenge here for Joe Pyfer. Because Joe Pyfer's boxing is very good. His grappling is very good. I think he probably does KO TKO Jack Hermansson. And if Jack Hermansson wants to wrestle, I think the grappling of Joe Pyfer, like I said, it's up to scratch. It's very good. The real challenge for Joe Pyfer, like I said, is those extra 2 rounds, those extra 10 minutes. But I do think he passes the test. I think he's going to dust Jack Hermansson. Be Joe Pyfer. Be body bags. Let's go. As always, guys, drop down your main event, your co-main event, your straight bets, your doubles, your parlays, your Money City bets, all that good stuff. Drop in the comment section below. And as always, keep your eyes to the sky, never glued to your shoes. Peace.